We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, how are you doing tonight? Whoa. I just lose my mic. My God, I didn't lose it, but hold on a second. This shit is, there we go. I really need to invest in better equipment. Let's put it that way. But how you doing? Hopefully good. It has been a pretty wild week. And for me personally, there's just so much stuff going on. I'm getting to the point where I would like to do this a lot more often. Right now, I'm just doing it once a week. But, I think the frequency of these will probably increase. And I'm getting better at, a lot of the production elements of it, And so tonight it was funny. I was watching Due Dissidence covering the Republican debate. And, I have to laugh because Trump didn't show up. So it's really just this cadre of idiots. And what I did see of it was just a bunch of dudes they were being super aggressive. Like Mike Pence they were all being mad aggressive. And I think it was like them trying to compensate for the lack of Trump, especially Chris Christie. Like Chris Christie he's a Jersey bad boy anyway, but he said something to Vivek that was kind of like, he called him Chat GPT or something. It was, they brought the drama. And, I just thought that they were very aggressive, very aggressive politicians. So anyway, we didn't see any protesters though. We didn't get to hear this tonight.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me. I didn't do anything. Ow! Ow! Ow!
That is absolutely my favorite sample, and I will use any excuse to play it. So forgive me for that. So getting into tonight's show, I'm going to try something a little bit different tonight. Just because, I've had problems obviously with being canceled or shut down, having my stream shut off. But even if that happens by chance, what I've been doing is I'll record these. And then the last one, number 32, they totally cut me. But I recorded it, and so it's up. The full version is up on Rumble. So if YouTube's going to be shiesty like that, I'll just go back to my roots. And long term, over the next couple of weeks, I probably said this before, but I'm going to have audio versions of these up that you can listen to on like Spotify or Apple or whatever. I'm kind of like going backwards. Most people start out with audio and then go to streaming, but I kind of started out on YouTube and Rumble and went back to that. I actually started on Rumble. And I've been posting a bunch of my old stuff on TikTok. And when I go back through it now, I'm like, okay, now I understand why I did this on Rumble. Because a lot of it is stuff about the COVID narrative and January 6th and all that kind of stuff. So today I saw this. It was on Jimmy Dore, who Craig Pasta Jardula, how do you say his last name? From Convo Couch. He's been filling in for Jimmy and definitely a great fit. But they were covering this bit today with Jennifer Lawrence, and she was talking about corruption in politics. And I think they kind of got her a little bit wrong. But whatever the case, it got me thinking how everything in this country is so commoditized, because the reason that there's so much corruption in politics and the reason that you can't fix it is because of what I call the election industrial complex, which is basically the ungodly sums of money that are spent to elect people. And it gets worse and worse every year. And there are a lot of PR and advertising firms, and that's a world I know pretty well, that make a ton of money on this, and that's why, like I said, it's like an election industrial complex. They want it to stay like this, They have a vested, it's big money every 2 years. And so I don't know how we fix it, but it just got me thinking that, I think if you just took care of, if we could just take care of people's basic needs and have some really basic social safety net things in this country, life would be so much better for everyone. And even for the billionaires, I mean, you've got a situation now where you're going to have people with pitchforks and torches before too much longer. You can tell by the success of that bearded ginger guy's song, I'm part ginger myself, so I'm not hating. I think that guy's song is good. It's not really my favorite style of music, but I think the message resonates, and that's why it's popular. And of course, the Brunchlibs immediately attacked it. But the point I'm making here is all the elites and the billionaires and the people who run things would have to do to like really just make life perfect for everyone, including themselves, is to just let up just a little bit and give people healthcare, give people a living wage, or, whatever you got to do. Because the situation now, and by living wage, I mean UBI, because the situation now is just worsening and worsening and worsening. And it's forcing people to really think outside the box. And it's, I don't think it's working, but anyway, we need to get started because
I've not yet begun to defile myself.
I'm working on the sound effects. I'm getting a little bit better. There's going to be, I got some great ones for you now.
I heart feces.
Sometimes I want to bring Keith Olbermann in and just hear what he has to say. And so, Keith Olbermann, what's one of your favorite things?
I heart porn star dick.
Well, Keith, that was not what I expected. What else do you love, Keith?
I heart Donald Trump.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's good because we got some Donald Trump news on the agenda tonight. And in fact, a pretty large segment of my show tonight will be covering the Donald Trump Tucker Carlson interview. And fear not, because I've pulled all the best parts for you, so you don't have to watch it. It just aired, and I watched a lot of it and took some notes and captured some of the best points. So, you know what I would say, let's get into this. Why not? So, let's see. We gonna do it. Now, I'm pretty pissed off because I'm almost positive at this point that my intro did not have sound again. And I don't know why I'm neglecting to tick the little box, but I think Zoom needs to fucking fix this and just assume that when someone shares a goddamn video, they're trying to share the sound. So maybe by default, Zoom, it should be set to fucking play the goddamn sound. Okay. And I'm making this Zoom's problem when it's really my problem. But come on, motherfuckers. If I'm going to share a video, I'm fucking, and they don't make it obvious either. They don't go like, hey, do you want to see this, play the sound for this? It's like this tiny little hidden box, and I'm not paying attention. It's like in the bottom, it's like, yeah, click this little box if you want the fucking sound. Fuck you, Zoom. Cunts. Sorry. I'm just kidding, Zoom. I love you guys. I wouldn't be doing this without you, so forgive me. That was a very European insult. So anyway, diving right into this here, Cornel West said this, and I don't watch Meet the Press. Every once in a while, I will catch Katie Halper and Aaron Matei doing such. But tonight, I don't watch Meet the Press. Let's put it that way. I don't give a fuck about what these people are saying. But Ryan Knight here posted this today, and this is what we're going to kick this show off with, our first piece here about Cornel West. And so what Ryan says here is Cornel West on Meet the Press now after he's asked if he will drop out. This is his quote. I intend to be in this race until the end. It's not just about this election. It's about a larger movement to break the two-party system because it doesn't meet the pressing needs of poor and working people. How beautiful is that? That's the reality. So what happens next? Well, Cornel West is a threat. Here you have ABC News. Philosopher and presidential Green Party candidate Cornel West currently owes more than $500,000 between unpaid taxes and unpaid child support, according to tax records. Oh, do they now? Does he now? So I've seen people, a couple of the people in my mentions who don't like Cornel West have brought this up. Whoa, that sucks, man. That really hurts that he didn't pay child support. Oh, he's a bad person. No, you're a fucking idiot, because this is what they do to people. So I happened to pull this article about Martin Luther King being prosecuted or raked over the coals for income tax. So let's dive into this. And I didn't pull the whole thing, so you're welcome. But as a country, we've grown used, and this is from Forbes, we've grown used to the idea that our leaders could be investigated by authorities for allegations ranging from perjury to collusion. Oh, is that a fact? Well, politicians on both sides of the aisle are quick to throw out the words witch hunt to describe and discount the idea that they might have been engaged in wrongdoing. Witch hunt or not, it happens so often that we've almost grown dismissive of headlines that any of our leaders could be under investigation. You know, this is an old article, but that sounds like Biden people, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's nothing. And meanwhile, what are they doing to Trump? It was clear to many supporters of many of his supporters that Dr. King was targeted because of the color of his skin and the words that he dared to speak about inequality in 1960. He made news as the first person ever criminally charged in the state of Alabama on tax fraud. And you can read the statement issued, Committee to Defend Martin Luther King Jr., accusing the state of Alabama of falsely distorting Dr. King's 1958 income tax return in an attempt to indict him. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't that sound familiar? Distorting his return in order to indict him. Interesting. Who else is being indicted? After his indictment, Dr. King was asked by a reporter, have your income tax returns been investigated before? He replied, oh, yes, they have been investigated 2 or 3 times before. This is nothing new. You can see the interview with Dr. King. I didn't pull the clip. The case would eventually go to trial. The outcome was surprising. So this article was written on Martin Luther King Jr. Day a few years ago. On today, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as I always do, I'm reporting on an article that I wrote a year ago about the trial and the legal profession. So I didn't go into all the details. I didn't get anything more than that, but I just wanted to call this up as a reminder of how stupid things can get, because they're already doing this to Cornel West, and they're doing it to Trump, and it doesn't whether you like Trump or not doesn't matter. These tactics are what I'm talking about, because people will come at me like, oh, you comparing Trump to Martin Luther King. Ugh. No, I'm not, you dipshits. That's a dumb defense. I'm comparing the tactics that are being used against Martin Luther King to the tactics that are being used against Trump, because whether you like him or not, it's very clear that the existing power structure hates his guts and wants him out and does not want him in the White House. And to me, that's a plus. That makes me like him a lot more. The fact that there is such an organized campaign against someone like Trump in the media and in the, establishment circles, to me is like, wow, I like this guy. I will probably vote for him. Depending on who, if it's Biden and Trump, I will probably vote for Trump. I'm not going to lie. I like, and I don't even, I don't even care what his policies are. I'm not even lying. Because if it's Biden and Trump, I just know that the people who run the FBI and all these bullshit intelligence agencies that think they're the arbiters of, they're our leaders, and the unelected bureaucrats in the fucking state, he makes them mad. And that to me is good enough, because if it's Biden, the choice is real clear. The guy's a corpse. Anyway, back to our little presentation here. So up next, we're going to talk about your boy Bill Maher. And I made this graphic a few years ago, making fun of Bill Maher, because this really is what his show has become. Boomer time with out of touch Hollywood guy. And listen, I love Bill Maher. I loved Bill Maher for a long time. I still like Bill Maher for a lot of reasons. I don't think he always is terrible, but he is rich out of touch Hollywood guy. And this clip here absolutely proves that. So I didn't have the gusto to watch this whole damn podcast. I don't know if you'd call this gusto, but I didn't have the patience. Let's put it that way. I have the patience to watch Bill Maher talk to Marianne Williamson. So what did I do? I went to the experts, the political experts at one of my and your probably favorite shows, Do Dissidents. And let's see what Keaton and Russell have to say here. Wait, let me just, and again, I'm ultra paranoid. I'm sure it's fine now, but I just want to make 100% sure that the sound is active here because
his old age. Here's Bill Maher talking about how things are actually pretty good in America, and he bases that assessment on his personal experience riding around Los Angeles and America when he's out playing gigs. Here's Bill Maher talking about how actually, things aren't so bad.
You just ride around, you just see a country that does not look like it's falling apart.
Bill.
But my eyes also matter. It matters what I read and what people tell me. It also matters that I just live in this world and I travel a lot.
You don't really live in this world. That's the whole point, is that
Dude,
your eyes are actually the worst source of information you could possibly refer to, because your eyes are wired to your brain and your
the Hollywood and Beverly Hills,
which gives you a very subjective experience of America.
And not the bad part of Hollywood.
You're rich. You know what I mean?
Best lives. And they're not all fucking rich. It's not all the top 20%. For all its horrible problems, this country still somehow, how we got through the pandemic and didn't go broke, I don't know. I mean, we probably will in the future. Maybe it's the inflation is part of that issue. But I just don't see a country where the people are just seething and unhappy when I'm out. And that has to count for something.
I mean, it's just incredible. It just speaks to such a shallow understanding of what poverty is and what misery is. When you see homeless people walking around on the street, are they seething angry all the time? Or are they crying all the time? No, most people in day-to-day life look like they're doing what they got to do to get to the next day, right? Like people aren't walking around.
Yeah, and he's right. There's a statistic about homeless people that something like 40%, I think, of homeless people actually have jobs. Like they're actually working homeless people that live in their cars. They're going to work. So, this goes back to what I opened with about the election industrial complex and just taking care of basic human needs. I mean, you would see a gigantic sea change in this country if you gave people universal health care, and that would really be all you would have to do. But also, there are other factors at play now, like a UBI, I think, is almost a necessity at this point, especially post-COVID, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, the reality is that Bill Maher and his show,
his old age,
are, boomer time with out of touch Hollywood guy. So, Bill, And this isn't even, what's funny is we're not even talking about real time. We're not even talking about his actual show. We're talking about his podcast. And this guy made Marianne Williamson look good. You know, she actually, and maybe that, you know, maybe that's part of the strategy. I don't know. But Bill Maher is so out of touch. He actually made Marianne Williamson look sensible. And I mean, I'm not saying that Marianne Williamson isn't sensible. I think she seems like a sensible person. She's just another one of those establishment shills who, you know, is going to say what needs to be said when it comes to the war in Ukraine and, you know, the COVID narrative and all that kind of stuff. So let us continue. I kind of like this new format. It makes it easier for me a little bit to do this in kind of a oh, why does it keep going backwards? I need to figure out how that works. So anyway, I'm using basically PowerPoint to slide through this, and I think it works a little bit better if I can compile all these clips in advance and have a set show, because sometimes I'm kind of freestyling it, and you know, that's never good. So anyway, for this next story, your boy Lee Fong from The Intercept is now on Substack, and I got this email this morning, and it's a story that's actually really interesting. And full disclosure, I haven't even read the whole story yet, but this cat Vivek was on the debate stage tonight at the Republican debates, and so he's been around on all the Fox News shows. So he's trying to be a serious contender in the GOP presidential race. I do like too that he came out and said that if he would get elected, he would pardon Trump, and that all the GOP candidates should agree to that. It's an obvious pander, but it's a smart political move. And I think it was Keaton and Russell who kind of pointed that out. But anyway, let's dive into this article, because this is bound to be interesting. So here's the story. The untold story. So Donald Trump may have deprived Vivek Ramaswamy of a COVID vaccine fortune. The untold story of how President Donald Trump's drive to expedite coronavirus vaccines may have violated patents owned by Ramaswamy's company. So Vivek Ramaswamy, the entrepreneur running for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination, was asked by Iowa-based talk radio host Steve Deese recently about Operation Warp Speed, the public-private partnership to speed up the research and delivery of COVID-19 medications. Ramaswamy disputed the success of the vaccine initiative created by then President Donald Trump in 2020 at a cost of over $18 billion, and called it an example of crony capitalism. Interesting. I think we need to divorce the private sector from government, Ramaswamy added, because that's where a lot of cronyism festers. He's not wrong. I agree. I don't know that once he got in there and got the reins of power that he would actually do it, but he is on the money about that. Left unmentioned in the interview was the direct role the initiative may have played in depriving Ramaswamy of the unprecedented fortune unleashed by the dominance of American vaccines. In the rush to develop a treatment for COVID-19, the Trump administration invoked a World War I-era law that gave companies like Moderna the right to infringe on third-party patents in order to develop products for the government during a national emergency. That is very interesting. So in the name of an emergency, you can kind of do whatever you want. It's like that Naomi Klein book, The Shock Doctrine. It's too bad Naomi Klein is kind of worthless at this point. Moderna's messenger RNA vaccine, known as mRNA, works by delivering genetic instruction into a patient's cells. The novel approach, which allows the company to rapidly develop new vaccines using genetic sequencing, remade the company overnight. Moderna, using the mRNA technology, was one of the first pharmaceutical companies in the world to receive emergency authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine. The innovation fueled skyrocketing growth for the Massachusetts-based company, Moderna, which had never brought a drug to market in the past. Soared to a valuation of over $180 billion in 2021 as it rolled out the vaccine, minting several new billionaires in the process. But a case in federal court contends that Moderna improperly used patented technology owned by a subsidiary of Ramaswami's Roivant Sciences, the biotechnology firm he founded. Moderna, in order to produce its COVID-19 vaccine, allegedly used the patented lipid nanoparticle technology. Wow, that's a mouthful. Patented lipid nanoparticle technology. The patented lipid nanoparticle technology. Say that 12 times fast. Patented lipid nanoparticle technology developed by Arbutus Biopharma and licensed only to a sister company called Genevant Sciences without authorization. The two companies are close to Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy previously served as a chairman of Arbutus, and Genevant is a subsidiary of Roivant, the firm Ramaswamy founded in 2014 and left last year. He still owns shares of Roivant worth upwards of $50 million. It's hard to overstate the importance of lipid nanoparticles in the rapid creation of the coronavirus mRNA vaccines. The mRNA molecule is fragile if injected directly. Excuse me. The mRNA molecule is fragile and, if injected directly, would rapidly degrade and fail to penetrate the membrane of the human body's cells. The lipid nanoparticles are essentially little oily bubbles used to encase the mRNA molecule so the vaccine can make it to the cells, delivering instructions on how to build spike proteins. Arbutus and Genevant, in court filings, claim that Moderna had previously licensed their lipid nanoparticles for other products and appeared to have copied the technique without authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine. Moderna, the plaintiff, claimed simply used the patented technology without paying for it or even asking for a license. Moderna, in response, noted that even if the infringement had taken place, the company had every right to take any patent it needed for the vaccine, pointing to the Trump administration's invocation of 28 U.S.C. 1948, a title law used, a little used law that grants corporations with extraordinary powers during an emergency to use the patented inventions without the permission of patent holders. Very interesting. Very interesting. The law, though technically enacted in 1910, was expanded in the wake of the First World War, during which the U.S. military struggled to mobilize cutting-edge armaments from private firms. In particular, the nascent aircraft industry was beset at the time by monopolistic forces, including the Wright brothers and the airplanes manufacturer Glenn Curtiss, which used almost confiscatory patent licensing to restrict competition. Franklin Roosevelt, then serving as Secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson, called for Congress to expand existing compulsory licensing law to allow the military to acquire aviation patents and other patents in the case of a national emergency. Trump made no public mention of invoking Section 1948 in his administration's contracts for vaccine development. The administration cited the law in many major COVID-19 related contracts, including funds for respirators and coronavirus therapeutics. In recent years, progressive lawmakers, including Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders, have called on the federal government to make more use of Section 1498, I keep saying 1948, 1498, to seize patents and force the production of generic drugs for certain high-cost medications. Despite the partisan rancor in Washington, D.C., that makes bipartisan healthcare reform nearly impossible. Trump's use of the law places him well to the left of most business-friendly Republicans on pharmaceutical policy. God damn it. Moderna, in its initial contracts to research and deliver vaccines, received Section 1498 authorization, a fact its attorneys have forcefully reminded the court in its dispute with the arbitrist Genentech. Short of war, it is difficult to conceive of a situation more within the heart of Section 1498 than the COVID-19 crisis, wrote Moderna's attorneys, who argued that the plaintiff should instead file the suit against the U.S. government in federal claims court. So that is very interesting. That reveals a lot of stuff that I think one of the most interesting things is how they say that Trump never publicly admitted that they were using that clause to bypass patent laws, basically. And I mean, that's just one example of the things they were able to do with the emergency situation. You know, they can just say, oh, it's an emergency. It's this crazy, you know, extraordinary circumstance where we have to, you know, take away your right to bodily autonomy and take away your right to run your business autonomously and, you know, take away your right to hold a patent on something, you know? And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that I don't feel bad for the people who run Moderna or, you know, funded it, because they're obviously not the most up to snuff group, let's say, to be nice. But yeah, that's just very interesting and not something that many people are talking about. So cheers to Lee Fong for reporting on that. So this next section, we're going to talk about and watch clips from Tucker Carlson's interview with former President Donald Trump. And I think I said this at the outset of this episode, but I mean, you're making me like Trump, guys. I don't like. Is this intentional? Does the press just want Trump back in office so they because he's a boon for ratings and ad dollars? You know, I mean, one could argue that MSNBC and CNN never did better until he became president, and so it would like them face planting on something like this intentionally to get him back into office so they can get those sweet views back up would not surprise me. I'm not saying that's what's actually happening, but anyone who thinks critically and is know what's going on. God damn it. God damn. Okay, so that's why my goddamn mic keeps going out. I don't know if I need a new cable or a new mic, but it shorts. So there's been a couple times when I've been on stream and I'll just be talking and then I'll like go to edit it or just to check the quality of it when I like rewatch some of it and I'm just yapping and there's no sound. So if you've seen that before, now you understand why. I need new equipment. I'm not doing this as professionally as I could be, but hey, sometimes it's better this way, right? So I think Keaton and Russell talked about this a little bit. I watched some of their coverage of this Republican debate on Rumble. And I think it was Keaton who said this, and he's right. Watching that debate, Trump was smart to skip it because, first of all, it was like 8 people, and he's the front runner. So, I mean, like he's already polling at like 70%, and they're all at like 3 or 4, like I think the highest one is like at 5 or 8 or something like that. So, you know, it didn't sound like he was saying he won't ever debate, but just not yet. Like he doesn't need to debate any of these assholes. And it looked like from what I saw that they were all kind of trying to be him in his absence. You know what I mean? Like be the commanding presence on the stage, the alternative to Trump, you know? So what he did instead was he went on Tucker Carlson and listen, I mean, if you've ever listened to Trump talk, he says a lot of silly shit, you know? I'm not going to deny that. There's a lot of stuff, and he's very hyperbolic. He's like, oh, I'm the best at everything. Everything I do is the greatest. You know, he's that kind of guy. He speaks in hyperbolic terms about himself specifically. But I do think that he says a lot of stuff in this that is very on point, and I tried to be very precise with these clips. So, you know, you should watch the whole thing if you give a shit. But let's dive into this. So in this first clip, he's kind of talking about, well, let's just listen to it.
It's interesting, though, because you spent a lot of your career in television.
Yeah.
You had a top show in television on NBC. But you don't feel the need now running for president to do television, obviously. Do you think television is declining?
Well, according to a poll that I guess we just saw, it just came out where it's down like 35%, but I think they were referring to cable. I think cable's down because it's lost credibility. MSNBC, or as they say, MSDNC, is so bad. It's so wrong what they write and what they do and what they say. It's, you know, it's fake news, as I said. I think I came up with that term. I hope I did, because it's a good one. It's not tough enough anymore. It's corrupt news. You know, really what you do is call it corrupt news, but somehow that doesn't play as nicely. But it is corrupt news. So you have MSNBC and you have CNN, who's absolutely doing no ratings at all. I mean, they're dead. But they're doing none because they don't have credibility. They really don't have credibility. Fox is way down, as you know. And the good old days are long ago. I will say this, it could come back, but they just don't have a lot of credibility. Tucker, you know that perhaps better than anybody. I think it was a terrible move getting rid of you. You were number one on television, and all of a sudden we're doing this interview, but we'll get bigger ratings using this crazy forum that you're using than probably the debate or competition.
It's interesting, though, because you spent a lot of your career.
So he's not wrong about that. And I don't think he actually invented the term fake news. I think it was Jon Stewart, actually. The first place I ever heard fake news was Jon Stewart, because he always called himself fake news. He's like, oh, we're fake news, you know? But Jon Stewart was actually more real than the news that Trump's now calling fake news, because, you know, it's interesting how that dynamic has kind of been flipped, because it used to be Jon Stewart jokingly saying, hey, I'm fake news, you know, but the fake news was better than the real news. And now everyone just calls the real news the fake news because it's so obviously tainted and terrible. And I'm optimistic in the sense that I think a lot of people who maybe weren't on this page before, because I know if you're paying attention, you're on that page, you get it. But I think I'm optimistic in that a lot of people who aren't like us, who aren't critical thinkers, who aren't skeptical of, you know, these narratives and the corporate water cooler, are coming around. I feel like the COVID thing really broke a lot of people. It took a little while for it to set in, but the other night I was at the supermarket, right? And I'm like pushing my cart through the store, just looking at, you know, chips or whatever, like, and I'm not even kidding you, on the loudspeaker, they start running an ad for a vaccine. I think it was like, get your Prevedistinar or whatever the fuck it was. It's like, this time of year is a blah, blah, blah. It was a vaccine for like allergies or something. I don't even know what it was for. I just remember hearing it out of the, you know, and just thinking like, wow, we are literally an idiocracy at this point. Like it was like I was like at an airport or something, and there's like some person like, don't forget, buy this, brought to you by blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's watch this next clip.
Television. Failing, he obviously is failing. I think it's clear to every.
So here they're talking about Gavin Newsom potentially running for president, and this is pretty interesting.
but that would make Kamala Harris the candidate?
Well, not really. I mean, I guess they'd have maybe a free-for-all. A lot of people say she has to remain.
This is funny what he says about Kamala Harris.
For certain reasons, the candidate, she has to. I don't think that's true, actually. I don't think that other people would stand for it. She has some bad moments. Her moments are almost as bad as his. I think his are worse, actually.
Yeah.
But
she seems pretty senile, too.
She speaks in rhyme. It's weird. It's weird. But she has bad moments. And
in rhyme? What do you...
Well, the way she talks, the bus will go here and then the bus will go there because that's what buses do. And it's weird. The whole thing is weird. This is not a...
What I think is funny about that is Trump here sounds sharper and more like intellectually like on it than Biden or Kamala Harris. Really, he's like kind of clowning on her, and not even in like a spiteful, mean way, just in a funny, like observant way. You know, like, oh yeah, she does kind of sound like that. That's exactly how she sounds.
President of the United States future. And I think they probably have some kind of a primary and other people will get involved.
Newsom, right? I mean,
could be. I mean, you know, I always got along well with him, believe it or not, but could be him, could be somebody else. He's got a big load on his shoulders because you look at California, what's happened. But I don't know if the American people really, the people that vote for him, I don't even know if they care. You know, you look at so many of the things that are going on, and people don't seem to be, in the old days, if you had a bad record, it meant a lot. Today, if you have a bad record, it doesn't really mean anything. You know, he looks good, he's a nice looking guy, speaks well. But Biden, every time you watch him talking, it's like he's walking on eggs. You're waiting for him to collapse. And he...
No lie spoken. I mean, it is absolutely. So I think seeing this kind of stuff makes me reassess the way that I perceived Trump when he was president, because I feel like, do you remember when they were like, oh, Trump told everyone to inject bleach? Or like he said, he tweeted hamburgers or something. Like it was just like every day it was some new ridiculous thing that they were saying about him. Or Kavifi. Like one day he actually tweeted out Kavifi or whatever. And it was like, I felt like some days he was just trolling. Like he was almost like, here, I'm going to tweet this out. And the media will be like, oh my God, he said Kavifi all day while he's like doing some shady shit that they're not paying attention to. But he was masterful at manipulating them. But also I do feel like everyone's perception is that, oh, he's such a big dummy. And now when you look at it, like look at this footage versus like Joe Biden footage recently or Kamala Harris footage recently, and the script is completely flipped. It's like the reality is they're the dumb senile ones, and he's actually kind of sharp for the most part. I mean, he's still Trump. He still says a lot of really crazy hyperbolic stuff. But anyway, let's watch this next clip. Oh, what did I do?
I don't think he's capable of.
Can I just ask you, that gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work, you got elected anyway.
Okay, so this is actually a really good clip. Listen to this.
Impeachment didn't work twice, obviously. Indictment is not working. Your poll numbers go up. When they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of last year, your numbers went up. They can indict you 20 times, and you're not gonna lose the Republican primary because of that.
Well,
so,
it
like,
makes it look even more ridiculous. I mean, the 4 indictments, and maybe there'll be more. I don't know. These people are crazy.
But they're counterproductive. So if you chart it out, it's an escalation, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So what's next? After, try to put you in prison for the rest of your life, that's not working. So, like, don't they have to kill you now?
I think the people of our country don't get enough credit for how smart they are. And I'm not sure I would have said this 10 years ago, but they get it. They really get it. When somebody gets indicted, your poll numbers go down. When somebody gets indicted, you announce
This is so accurate what he says. Listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be leaving to spend time with my family and to fight for the rest of my life on this stuff. But you're out of politics. I got indicted 4 times. All trivia, nonsense, bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's horrible when you look and you look at what they're doing. The boxes hoax, I'm covered by the Presidential Records Act. I'm allowed to do exactly that. He's not covered, and he's got 25 times the number of boxes, and he's got them stored in Chinatown. He's got them stored in a flimsy garage underneath his Corvette at Penn. And by the way, at Penn, he gets millions of dollars. China pays this guy millions of dollars. See, I think he's the most corrupt president we've ever had.
So, again, Trump's pretty hyperbolic. It's not like Trump has a clean slate or anything. Like I'm not saying that, but the stuff Biden's involved in is way shady, and he gets a pass for being Biden. But I think what I love the most about what he said there was the whole like, oh, and then they're gonna like, I gotta go spend time with my family, and I'll fight for this, in my personal life. That's exactly how it usually happens when the kind of stuff is happening to him. It happens where someone gets indicted, or they're the grab him by the pussy thing, or any amount of stuff that Trump has been able to kind of like let's kind of slide off. But he's right. People are smart. People see through it. Like people, I think a lot of people are wising up to it. And I mean, a lot of people I wouldn't have expected to. Like I said, I did not like Trump. Like the thing I didn't like about him wasn't even him. It was that he emboldened the worst people. Like there were just like the worst people. Yeah, Trump. I was like, oh my God, I can't stand those people. So I think that's why it's so easy to dislike the guy, because of that, because the Charlottesville people, and even that there's good people on both sides stuff. That again, that goes back to the perception thing, where it's like the birther thing. Willie Bragg and I talked about this on a couple streams ago. It was Hillary that invented the birther thing, because I was actually kind of giving Hillary and Obama a pass for the Russiagate stuff, for Russiagating Trump, because he was always so adamant about the birth certificate question. But Willie pointed out that it was actually Hillary who pushed that. And, I'm so behind on editing. I'll probably have a segment on that conversation to post eventually. But anyway, let's get back to this. There's a couple more gems in here.
Can I just ask you, that gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work,
they do things that are not very...
So how do you... That's my question. How do you, if you get elected again, go back to...
Okay. So in this clip, this is actually a really good one. Tucker basically asks him, if you get elected again, what are you going to do? Because these agencies are all out to get you. The FBI, the CIA, the whatever. How are you going to deal with that if you get back in? Which is, based on that alone, it's going to be a tough haul for him. But anyway, listen to what he says.
Question: how do you keep the agencies under control? How do you keep FBI and CIA specifically under control?
The way you do it, like I fired Comey, that was a big deal. A lot of people said, and I fired him very early. Somebody said, oh, I wish you would have fired him. There was a real question about firing him. Anyway, you understand, because, when they have a 10-year term, there is a question. I fired Comey. That was a great thing. If I didn't fire Comey, maybe I wouldn't be talking to you, or I'd be talking to you about real estate or something else other than politics, right? That was a coup, in my opinion. That was a very sick deal. That was the insurance policy. You remember the insurance policy? Oh, she's going to win, darling. She's going to win. But just in case she doesn't, we have an insurance policy. An insurance policy was what they were doing. And we caught them with that. That was a very important tweet, or whatever it was, text. It was a big deal. That was a big deal. The insurance policy. She's going to win 100 million to 1. That's not good odds. At least they gave me 1, right? 100 million to 1. But just in case she doesn't win, we have an insurance policy. And everybody said, that's strange. That's strange. But we caught all that because I fired Comey. Because when I fired Comey, it was like throwing a rock into a hornet's nest. into a nest of bees, and the place went crazy.
So when you were president,
they do.
So that's an interesting statement about throwing a rock into a hornet's nest, because that his whole presidency, you know, he was fighting these forces. So I didn't know that thing about the insurance policy. I'm assuming he's talking about the texts that what's his name, the FBI guy Strzok sent to his mistress or whatever, that they subpoenaed, and basically that's the guy who was saying like, oh, we'll never let him be president or whatever, you know. But another thing that he's kind of right about, he, you know, no one bought it, no one believed it when he said it, but he was right about it. So whoa. Okay. Now we're lost. I gotta get back to where we were at, because we're not in the right place. Hold on a second.
I don't think he's capable of.
I just ask you, that gets back to my original question. So
Well, we already covered that one.
They do things that are not very.
So how do you? That's my question.
So okay, here we are. All right. Yeah, we got one. Okay. Forgive me. I'm still a little dicey with this. So this is the last one, and this is my last clip from the Trump interview, but enjoy it.
I think it's a lot easier because I'm so high in the polls, because it means the people get it. The people see it's a fraud. The people see it, like this horrible district attorney from just a little while ago, from essentially Atlanta, that's Fulton County. She said, basically, I don't have any right to challenge an election. Well, what about Stacey Abrams? What about Hillary Clinton? What about all of these Democrats that are still challenging my election? The same people that are saying he's challenging an election challenged my election. And they did it with slates. They did it with all sorts of things. They were very bad about it. But basically, they're suing me, and they're saying, you don't have any right to challenge it. If you challenge an election, we're going to indict you and put you in jail. So what they're doing is they've weaponized, and don't kid yourself, the DOJ and Biden and the whole group, they're watching all of this stuff. They love the local stuff. You know, the DA in Manhattan. Not only that, they put one of the DOJ top people into the Manhattan DA's office to run things. They don't even have a case against me. It's not even a case. Everyone says, even the Democrats say, you can't bring these cases. You have no case. The Attorney General or the District Attorney, Fannie Willis, in Atlanta, she's getting killed. Basically, she's saying Trump doesn't have the right to criticize an election. But you've been around long enough now. You've seen many elections criticized. I mean, Hillary Clinton goes crazy. Every time she talks, she says, he's not the president. Jimmy Carter said, he's not the president. Well, I am the president. Hillary Clinton called me, by the way, at 3:02 in the morning to congratulate me the night of the election.
Did her voice?
So there it is. Those are pretty much it's funny. You may or may not have heard this too, but when he said she's getting killed out there, or she's getting killed or whatever, you wait, some shit lib or some Brunchlib asshole is going to take that clip and make it out to be like he's calling for her to be murdered or something. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like, I can already actually hear it now. You know, I could hear the Keith Olbermann broadcast where he's like, in today's news, we had, he's like, you know, his petulant voice where he's like, and then today we have the Putin's puppet Trump said that he wants Fannie Mae to be killed. Well, he's the worst person in the world. And I also have to say that
I heart porn star Dick.
What else do you have to say, Keith? Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Zelensky licked Joe Biden's dick. The Biden administration saw Zelensky coming a naked orgasm over sending defensive and offensive weapons to Ukraine.
Wow, that was a mouthful, Keith. Anything else before you sign off tonight, Keith, that you'd like to share with us?
I heart Donald Trump.
All right, thank you so much, Keith Olbermann. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Olbermann adding a special comment to tonight's episode. We love you, Keith. All right. Moving on, you may or may not care, but it sounds like the brunch COVIDians, as I like to call them, are on the rise again. They're coming back with some new, they want you to start wearing the face diapers again. And, I like to ask these people straight up, are you up on your boosters when they come at me? Because, none of them are. But the vaccine is safe and effective. Don't forget that. And I'm not trying to suggest anything but that. And it's an interesting thing because a lot of people just don't, they don't understand that, like, what COVID is really about. I don't think people understand what COVID was really about, what it was really about. Because it definitely wasn't about what they think it was. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So it's been interesting because there's some people that I usually wouldn't pay that much attention to. But now I understand why people like this guy are so hated by establishment figures, because just this sentiment alone is kind of like, oh, it's coming back. It's coming back. I don't even know if that is because of anything other than the trend of the market overall, but it's definitely a good point. And if you're not cynical, you really should be, because this is the world we live in. And Whitney Webb just kind of nails it right here. When will people figure out that the U.S. federal government always has infinite money for war, but never enough money to help the people it supposedly represents? They are fronts for professional thieves engaged in perpetual wealth transfer from us to them. And look at this. Who was it today that I saw doing the math? Oh, it was RFK. So RFK Jr. had this whole thing where he basically broke down. He goes, here's how much money they gave to Hawaiians. He's like, let's do the math. And I should have screenshotted it because it was brilliant, but I'll probably get my stream shut off. But he was talking about how, they just gave this much money to Ukraine, and if you divide that by like the population of Hawaii, like of Maui, that's like, it's like $500,000 per resident or something like that. It was, I'm butchering this, of course, but it made a lot of sense, the stuff he was saying. And again, it makes me feel good that people like him are in the running for this, even if it's a facade, and that they're saying these types of things and that people are responding favorably to it, because it's stuff that needs to be said. And I like, whether you like RFK or not, or you think he's a viable presidential candidate, the fact that he's out there saying these things is amazing. And he needs to be commended for it. So, that anti-Semite. Okay. So I want to wrap up tonight by we're going to dance around a little bit here, and we're going to talk about this clip. Ooh. Well, that makes me feel good because it sounds like I had sound on my intro. That was like frozen at my intro. But I want to talk about this clip. It's another Tucker Carlson piece, and this just really jarred me. I'm not going to lie. It's Colonel Douglas Macgregor on Tucker Carlson talking about Ukraine, and this will probably be our last segment tonight. We're coming up on what? We've only been on for an hour. This will probably take about a half hour at least. So, but I want to talk about some of the stuff that this guy says because it really needs to be talked about. And anyway, let me just make absolutely 1,000% sure we got sound. There we go. Okay, let's watch.
How would you assess and describe the state of the war in Ukraine right now?
That's an important question, and not enough people have good answers at this point. I think all of the lies that have been told for more than a year and a half about the Ukrainians are winning, the Ukrainian cause is just, the Russians are evil, the Russians are incompetent, all of that is collapsing. And it's collapsing because what's happening on the battlefield is horrific. The Ukrainians now, we think, have lost 400,000 men killed in battle. We were talking about 350,000 a few months ago. Within the last month of this supposed counteroffensive, which was to sweep the battlefield, they lost at least 40,000 killed. We don't even know how many people have been wounded, but we know that probably upwards of 40 to 50,000 soldiers are amputees. We know the hospitals are full. And we know that Ukrainian units at the platoon and company level, that's with anywhere from 50 to 150 to 200 men, are in piecemeal fashion surrendering to the Russians. Not because they don't want to fight, it's because they can't fight anymore.
So I want to stop for just a second because he mentioned amputees, and my blood boils because I'm thinking about the benefit thing that Jello Biafra and all these punk rock bands were doing for Ukrainian veteran amputees. And not because they're trying to help amputees, but because they're so fucking stupid. They don't realize that those guys would still have their limbs if it wasn't for the United States of America and the fucking war that they support. So they can fucking lick my taint after oh God, it pisses me off so bad. It makes me so angry that these people who people who I thought were, these like outside the box critical thinkers just fall for this stupid shit. All you have to do, it's all the patterns leading up to the Ukraine shit were it's like they literally use the exact same playbook as Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think it was Kurt Metzger today on Jimmy's stream saying, he's like, none of these people looked at Afghanistan the last time and like made the connection between that and Ukraine. These fucking idiots. It's because it's Democrats and it's right wing to criticize the war now. And you're a right winger. That's the shell game that they've played so well. And I think the reason that they're getting away with it, that people are like, oh, stand with Ukraine. Because all the critics are right wing. Look, Tucker Carlson, the white supremacist, is the only guy who will platform a dude like Colonel Macgregor. He's not getting on. And the crazy part is the idea that this guy is some kind of a Russian plant. He was a fucking general who served the country for a long time. Like, I'm sure he's probably like a West Point or MIT graduate. I don't know what all his credentials are, but he's not some like communist Putin sympathizer. He's a dude who like came up through the ranks in the military and is like almost like a whistleblower, like, hey, look what's going on, motherfuckers. This is not good for us. Anyway, back to our show.
They had so many wounded, they can't evacuate them. And commanders are saying, well, if I can't evacuate my wounded, I'm going to surrender because otherwise the wounded will die. And so they call the Russians, and they all speak Russian, and tell them on the radio, look, I've got 50, 60 wounded here. I'm going to surrender because I don't want them to be killed. And the Russians from the very beginning have always treated the Ukrainian soldiers very fairly and very gently. And so they know they're not going to be abused or mistreated. They know they can actually be exchanged for Russian prisoners in the future. So they've surrendered. And I think we're going to see this army that we've been spending so heavily on increasingly melt away. And at the same time as we're talking, if you look at this long banana-shaped strip of territory in southern Ukraine that the Russians control, if you go to the northeastern corner of that, south of this city called Kharkiv, there are major offensive operations taking place there right now. And the Ukrainian forces are being swept away in front of the Russians. And again, all of this happens in a way that is just not reported in the West. And in the meantime, rather than admit that this is a terrible tragedy that should be ended on humanitarian grounds, if no other, that the killing should stop, as President Trump said, stop the killing, we're going to continue. And this puts the Russians in the unhappy position of marching further west, because from the very beginning, Putin and his advisors were never interested in a war with NATO or the United States. That's why you've had such incrementalism, this slow grind of movement forward, defensive operations for a long period to build up the force, and then continued offensive operations. They have over 300,000 combat troops in reserve in Russia. And I think they're sitting there and not being released to fight because President Putin anticipates the possibility that we will intervene in Western Ukraine. And if we intervene in Western Ukraine, the Russians will be ready for that. And the consequences for us and for NATO will be devastating because we are not ready to fight the Russians.
And the people that are pushing this aren't going to do anything. It's going to be, us and our kids and our friends that are going to end up going over there. For what? Why can't we be friends with Russia? What's the problem here? What did Russia do? They did nothing. And when you look at the whole history, it was so funny. I got into a fight with my brother over this. And because, again, I don't want to throw him under the bus because he's not a bad person. He's not dumb or anything, but he's kind of like my marker for the general public because he's not a stupid person. But as soon as I went, yeah, this war is happening because of the US, he lost his shit. He was like, you idiot. Do you think, he's like, were the Russians and Ukrainians fighting before the US got them? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, then how can you say that we're the ones pushing this? I'm like, because we are. We are like, when you follow the history of this, and he gets into this, I don't even need to say it. I'm just let's go back to watching it because this is one of those things where this interview like hit me hard. And I'm surprised it's still, it's good that things are obviously coming around because I'm surprised it's up on YouTube, if I'm being honest. But I just watching this guy obviously knows what he's talking about. And this just really, this hurt me.
Why? Oh, I think the readiness has been on the decline for a long time. You've had an almost steady, uninterrupted decline in the discipline that makes soldiers fight. Discipline is a tough thing. We don't always understand it. Discipline is really a form of habit. And you build those habits over time through repetition, but you also build it under stress, under pressure, so that it sinks in. And then you build cohesion within the framework of those units.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I don't really care about this.
We don't have very many people like that because since 2001, most of the fighting has been on a very small scale against a fleeting enemy, running around force, highly disciplined, very competently led, trained, and equipped.
Okay.
Russian war. Because the French had fought Mexican bandits, Mexican rebels. They'd fought Arab bandits, Arab insurgents. They'd had a little experience fighting disgruntled, demoralized European troops, Austrians in northern Italy, but they hadn't faced a truly modern enemy. But people were convinced that the French army was the greatest army in the world because they'd fought in North Africa, in Indochina, Mexico, all over the world. That war was a catastrophe for France, and that army was decimated in months by a Prussian army that was a modern force, highly disciplined, very competently led, trained, and equipped. So we're not there. We have equipment that is decades old. The tanks that I served on, for instance, when I went to war in 1990, were virtually brand new, state of the art.
Listen to this.
Those tanks are still out there. They've been rebuilt, but they're not new anymore. They're no longer as capable as they once were. You know, I'll give you a quick example. We have a turbine engine in the M1 A1 series tanks, and that turbine engine burns up as much fuel sitting still as it does moving, because it's a turbine engine. It was designed to be used on an aircraft. We put them into tanks. So that means you've got an 8-hour tank.
Oh, God. Let me get past this. So this guy kind of breaks this down in a way that it's pretty clear that he knows what he's talking about. That's why another reason that this interview hit me so hard is because this guy is he's a general, but he's also laying out making his case, like this thing about the tanks. Now that I've been able to clear the ad break, I'm going to play the full clip. But so this thing about the tanks is just a clear indication that the level of detail that he goes into makes it very clear that he knows what he's talking about. So listen to this again. Oh, whoops.
It's a turbine engine. It was designed to be used on an aircraft. We put in 1990 were virtually brand new, state of the art. Those tanks are still out there. They've been rebuilt, but they're not new anymore. They're no longer as capable as they once were. You know, I'll give you a quick example. We have a turbine engine in the M1 A1 series tanks, and that turbine engine burns up as much fuel sitting still as it does moving, because it's a turbine engine. It was designed to be used on an aircraft. We put them into tanks. So that means you've got an 8-hour tank. Every 8 hours, if you're operating, you've got to refuel this thing. This thing also burns fuel at a very, very high temperature, over 1,000 degrees. And there are 40 plus connections around the engine that are very brittle, that can easily cause fires if accidentally they touch these little tubes that carry various types of fluid, if they actually touch this engine that's burning so hot. So the engine is so hot that you can track the movement of U.S. Army ground forces with tanks from low Earth orbiting satellites. So if you think you're going to hide or conceal yourself or outpace somebody, you're just a glowing target from space. To this must be added the ridiculousness of not having replaced that engine with a reliable, state-of-the-art diesel-electric engine, which is much cooler, which can go for 24 hours or more without a refuel. And these things are extremely problematic when you go to war, because you have to pull forces back, refuel them, return them to the front. That's not easy to do when you're operating as frequently as every 8 or 6 or 9 hours. They say, well, we put a generator on there to make up for this when you're sitting still. The problem is that you don't sit still for very long in combat, because if you do, you're going to be targeted and destroyed. And that, of course, is what we're seeing in Ukraine. Persistent surveillance from space, from overhead surveillance, makes everything visible all the time. So if you're going to embed yourself in the ground, if you're going to set up a permanent position there where you try to fire from that, you're going to be targeted and destroyed very, very quickly. So that's why this defense right now looks a lot like World War I, because anybody who moves is identified and killed. The only limitation on your ability to target and destroy the enemy is ammunition. The Russians, of course, have no shortages whatsoever. You recall at the beginning of this, we have all these shortages, right? The Russians can't keep up with missiles. The Russians can't keep up with shells. Well, they have multiple manufacturing facilities operating 7 days a week at 24 hours a day. We have no surge capacity in the United States. It would take us many, many months to come up to that kind of standard where we could actually compete in high-end conventional warfare. And that's why people like me and others worry that if we get into a confrontation, that we cannot win, because the world has changed, warfare has changed, integrated air defenses will knock virtually everything that flies out of the sky, that we will then fall back on a nuclear deterrent, a tactical nuclear weapon that says, if you keep advancing, we'll have to use a nuclear weapon.
Are you hearing what this guy's saying? He's warning us about a potential nuclear war this is just beyond crazy. And when you kind of listen to, the United States has turned into this bloated dinosaur that's disconnected in so many ways, and everything's about money. And it really has become an idiocracy where we're just like literally dumping money into this black hole in Ukraine and pushing their people into a meat grinder so that our weapons contractors can make money. It's wild to me. And here's the fucking Brunchlibs out here like, no, I stand with Ukraine. Joe Biden is awesome. Like, it's so frustrating. So I'm not going to play this full interview because it gets, I'm going to play a little bit more, but it's depressing because this guy is just in painful detail laying out why this is a gigantic mistake and people have just walked like blindly into it. I mean, I guess if you can trick people to stay home because of a cold virus for 2 years, you can trick them into anything, really. So
we don't want to go there because the notion that there are so-called tactical nukes, you've heard that expression?
Yes.
Oh, that's just a little nuke. So that won't precipitate a major war. The use of any nuclear weapon is going to precipitate escalation very rapidly because your opponents will assume that if they don't use their nuclear weapons, they're going to lose them. So we're living in a terrible dilemma right now. The smartest thing that we can do is end this war.
What is Russia's objective, do you believe? Assuming the objectives change over the course of a war.
Of course. Right? Well, the original objective.
Okay, so this is a question that no one seems to ask in the U.S. press. Or if they do, the answer is always just like, oh, Putin's a madman. Putin's a madman. Or they're acting like he wants to. There's this consensus among the neocons that Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. No, he's already made Russia powerful again. Look at they're winning this war. They're creating alliances with other powers in the world. We're forcing Russia and China. We forced Russia and China together with this instead of being these good stewards who could have gone in there and said, hey, look, what's going on? What's this conflict on the border of Russia and Ukraine? Look, we want to help you guys resolve it. What can we do to resolve this? We're like, yeah, we do what we do in every country. We arm the insurgency and try to buy out their leadership, which if you know the history of Ukraine and the Maidan coup and what happened in 2014, that's exactly what we did. We do the same thing in the Middle East. We go into these countries, in Africa, we go into these countries, and if their leaders aren't adequately subservient to U.S. interests, we fund insurgencies to get them overthrown and pulled out of there. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy Dore who said this, but all you have, American foreign policy is American domestic policy. We do this. We're doing the same things in these countries abroad that we're doing at home. The blind, just corruption and just dumping money into things and the crony capitalism and all the just shady shit that's going on. In foreign countries is going on here too. It's like all the Wall Street, like weird financial instruments they've developed. They're doing the same kind of fraud and bullshit in the military and like literally every aspect of our economy. Now healthcare as well, Anyway, I'll shut up. Let's watch a little more of this before I sign off for the night.
Objective, obviously, was very different. I mean, if they'd made peace with the Russians back in, let's say, March or April, I think the Russians would have retained very little territory, probably only Luhansk and Donetsk, the two so-called breakaway provinces. And I think there would have been guarantees of neutrality for Ukraine and guarantees of equal rights before the law for Russians. And that's what people don't understand. Most of this has to do with abuse meted out to Russians in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government. And this, of course, is this radical nationalist government that came to power in Kiev in 2014. And they almost
we
immediately,
helped
as soon
come
as
to
that
power.
government came into power, they started launching a war against the so-called breakaway provinces. And Putin kept trying and trying and trying. The Minsk Accords were another good example, trying to get to a solution that would not involve confrontation. Now we know, of course, thanks to Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, that the Minsk Accords were just a ruse, a way to kill time and give the Ukrainians more time to build up their forces. To build up their forces for what?
So we could use them as a vassal state to attack Russia.
And it's pretty clear they were building up for an offensive against Russia. And of course, the next step was that we bring in our missiles and station them in eastern Ukraine, which puts them in a couple of minutes away.
And that's where the money comes in, because there's the boon for weapons contractors. Now we got a war going. We're going to need missiles. How do we get funding? Well, we get everyone to go, yay, I stand to Ukraine. Billions. Let's send billions into a black hole because we got to get Putin.
From all of Russia's cities and all of Russia's nuclear deterrent. So this was unacceptable. So that original deal is gone now. And the question is, what will the Russians accept? Well, I think they're going to demand that whatever remains of Ukraine, rump Ukraine is what most people are calling it now, most of what's probably west of the Dnieper River, has to be neutral. It can't be part of NATO. The Russians will never tolerate NATO forces on Ukrainian soil because we've demonstrated conclusively that we are fundamentally hostile to Russia.
I mean, would we allow hostile countries to build bases in Mexico, in Tijuana? You know, like what world do you live in where Americans are so fucking stupid? We're so, like, the Afghanistan thing alone is just evidence of how fucking stupid people are. We just got raped in a war, and we're gonna allow it to happen again. So I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit here and show you another piece of this before we shut down, where homie talks about why this is happening. You know, I think he does such a great job. Like he just kind of laid out the reason Russia invaded right there. But he does such a good job kind of like not only breaking down why everything that we hear in the mainstream is wrong, but also backing it up with real, like what he just said about the Maidan coup and Angela Merkel basically admitting that, I mean, that's all public knowledge now, admitting that the Minsk Accords were just kind of a ruse for us to stall while we funneled weapons to Ukraine so we could attack Russia through through them. But in this part, he kind of talks about the monetary motivations, and he goes into it. Listen to this.
That he can't get money from any big time Republican donor because his position on Ukraine.
He's talking about Vivek Ramaswamy because he interviewed him the other day.
It is similar to yours. He doesn't buy the NBC News version of the Ukraine war. Why are donors on both sides so attached to a war that's clearly hurting the United States?
Well, first of all, you've got to go through and identify the donors. What's their background? Where did they come from? And why do they feel the way they do? I think there are more personal issues here than we realize with many of them. Secondly, you have to look at the monetary benefits to them. If they're it's not just being heavily invested in the defense industry. You've seen that report from the Oakland Institute, which talks about arable land in Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, some of the richest, most fertile soil anywhere in the world. A friend of mine who's Ukrainian said all you have to do is take an old boot, stick it in the ground in Ukraine, come back in 6 months, and something grows. The boot's transformed into something you can eat. He said that's how fertile this is. So there are people that are interested in getting control of it, oligarchs. They call them oligarchs in Eastern Europe. I'm starting to think that we should talk about oligarchs in the West.
Well, of course.
Because they're also invested in this. They have an interest in it. So that's part of it. Then, of course, you have the advantages of people on the Hill. You have somebody like McConnell who says, we're so fortunate that we're doing so much damage to the Russians This will set them back for 10 years. They've lost all this equipment. The Ukrainians have done a great job. Well, of course, all that's a lie. That's a blatant falsehood. And then he follows up by saying, and we're offloading equipment so that we can replenish with newer equipment. Well, unfortunately, the new equipment we're going to buy looks an awful lot like the old equipment. So you're not necessarily getting new top-of-the-line material. You're just getting new versions of what you've already got, which, of course, is what Congress wants. Unfortunately, that doesn't prepare you for a future war because your probable opponents are investing in very different capabilities from the ones that you have. And remember, again, all the things that we once monopolized, all the precision, all of that's lost now. Everybody has it. There's nothing that we can do that they cannot also do in Moscow, in Beijing, and probably in many other countries that we don't even know about yet. But of course, it all means money. You know, where does the money go? Does it go into the Defense Department? Sure. But then it's transferred over into industry. And industry then contributes money to PACs. And the PAC money goes where? Back to the Hill. So it's a wonderful.
So I'm gonna kind of cut out there, but he said something about the Defense Department that I think is important. And I wanted to dig up more information about this, but I don't know if people realize this, but the Defense Department controls elections now. And that as a result of Trump. When Trump won in 2016, maybe I can pull up a quick article about it. But the Defense Department controls elections now because of Trump winning in 2016. And election security, cybersecurity, and infrastructure. And so that basically, just the fact alone that the Defense Department has the ability to regulate elections, they get to decide what misinformation is, and they get to decide who's a Russian asset and who's a threat. And that's why everyone who's dissents now is called a Russian, because the State Department can classify you as a foreign asset and then shut you down. And it's getting kind of ridiculous and shitty. And, you know, when after hearing MacArthur speak, you know, I wanted to get some commentary from someone, you know, who might actually, you know, have something intelligent to say. Someone who, you know, is someone like Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann, and this is actually this isn't one of my funny edits. This is actually a legit thing that Keith Olbermann said about Doug MacArthur, this guy we just watched. So Keith Olbermann heard Doug MacArthur here say stuff like he just said, like we just listened to, and this is what Keith Olbermann's response was.
The retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor said on Fox last night,
Macgregor, sorry.
Quote, their casualties are horrific. We have effectively seen the Russians destroy 3 separate armies built by the Ukrainians, and everybody is beginning to wonder what's really happening. I hope Macgregor was paid for this. I hope Macgregor was paid for this by Putin. I hope he was paid a lot. I hope he can find somewhere to spend it all in hell. To charge through in what is clearly the next big fascist push in this country, the attempt to get America to betray Ukraine and serve Putin. All of which lines up perfectly with what is being broadcast in Russia on Vladimir Putin's propaganda channel, and for which Colonel Macgregor should be recalled from retirement and court-martialed as an unregistered foreign agent, and who, as I have noted previously here, would probably be described as a Russian asset, except who could ever think he's an asset to anybody? And suddenly it doesn't matter that much whether Donald Trump is paying the Russians back for the 2016 election, or if they did nothing about the 2016 election, or if he owes them billions, or if he's just doing it because he admires murderous dictators like Putin and would like to be one his own self. This country could wind up allied with Russia in a war against Europe. Ron DeSantis putting the ass.
Oh my God. That is a legitimate take. That's like what Keith Olbermann and people like him legitimately think about what's going on right now. That's liberals. That's the mainstream left. That's how fucking stupid they are. So Keith, and you got anything else to add to that?
I heart feces.
Profound, Keith. That's almost as profound as what you said about General Douglas Macgregor there. So anyway, it's depressing. It's depressing, and I need to log off. So that's an hour and a half. That's a pretty good stream. If I'm still on, thank you for hanging out and watching. As always, I got mad love for y'all. Twitter at Road Grimes. Shit. We gotta fix that. We gotta get that. We gotta get that fixed. We gotta get that fixed, folks. We gotta get the mic fixed. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. So I am going to I'm going to sign off here in just a minute, but I just wanted to say before I go.
Don't tase me, bro! Don't tase me! I didn't do anything! Ow! 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 Ow!
I just like the tantrum that kid throws is just so funny. Ow! Ow! He sounds like a child. Like it's anyway. Also, message for Kyle Klinsky.
Fuck you, Kyle. Fuck you, Kyle. You're a piece of shit.
I'm gonna get better sound effects too. You know, I really need to like add to my collection because I have some shit like this. Like I have some like cartoon noises and shit, you know. So it's like I could come in and be like, yo, what do you guys think? Hey, here we go. Or like I could be like, yeah, you know, the fucking ridiculous things that Keith Olbermann says, you know, it
that does not compute.
Or I could just go So yeah, I got some good ones. I used to DJ as DJ Side Effects. And so you're not going to believe this. This is way before COVID. But my thing was I used to pull from pharma commercials. I would pull like clips of the side effects. And there's all kinds of great stuff. Like if you get the sudden urge to gamble or kill yourself, talk to your doctor. But I have a couple of those, and some of them are great like for DJ mixes because like here's a good example of one. Listen to this.
Annoying sensations can keep you up at night when all you want to do is get some rest.
So that sounds good in a dance mix, right? It's like there's another really good one that where is it? Oh man, this is such a good one. I must have took it out of here. God damn it. I guess it's not as good as I thought because I think I took it out of my folder. This is a good one too. It's about what I'm... Okay, so anyway, enough of my sound effects bullshit. I'm going to get to editing this week. There's going to be a lot more clips up. I'm going to actually try to do more of these live streams on a regular basis. I don't know if I'm going to do them during the day or at night, but I'm going to do them more often. And I'm also going to have audio versions of my entire collection, like all episodes up on Spotify and, you know, Apple Music and all that stuff very soon as well. So with that, I'm going to sign off with one more clip for y'all.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And that's the Governor. And I'm also going to I put together this new sign off clip here. So I'm just gonna say goodnight to y'all. I got mad love. Thank you for tuning in, and please hit me up in the comments and or hit me up on Twitter at RealGrimes. Have a great night, and we will see you soon. Take care.